This is Terrence Orange Banks with Information Age Financial Solutions, coming to you with a sobering article I've stumbled across from Bloomberg.com. It just talks about the hunger crisis that's going on and workers keep America hungry. Imagine being in a place where you actually grow the food but can't afford it. This article touches on that. And sometimes when you bombarded, especially too, with everything is new business ideas, new things going on, everyone's making money, it just puts it to us just a sober reality that many people are struggling. And I'm going to dive right in this article, put a link inside the description, not to be gloom and doom. It's just talking about reality sometimes. And sometimes we just have a disconnect if you're not in a particular situation where you're struggling. And it puts the things in perspective, especially when you're dealing with people. So, as always, I'm putting a link inside the description. Hunger is surging in the heart of the bread basket, showing just how dire the problem has become during the pandemic. This was done September 2nd. Jessica Traxler, used a particular person here, was surrounded by food that she couldn't afford. Sitting in a faded out Chevy sedan on July morning in southern Minnesota, she looked at corn stalks, lush green as far as the eye could see. A few miles to the east, a mill was pumping out flour. Just beyond the farm grew peppers, beans, and berries. To the north, there were dairies, one after the other. To the south, a huge pork plant, grain elevators, poultry yards, cheese plants, all stood just a short drive away. If one place underscores just how dire American hunger problem has become during the pandemic, it is here, in the middle of the breadbasket that supplies food from coast to coast. The ranks of Americans fighting hunger are projected to swell some 45% this year to more than 50 million people. Traxler heard her husband and 6 children among them. She had come to the spot, an empty school parking lot in the town of Mankato, to collect free boxes of food staples, milk and apples and carrots. Hundreds of Minnesotians waited in line ahead of her for hours. It's been hard, she said. We had to dramatically change how we eat. And this is the basics of Maslow's hierarchy, if you've ever heard of the term. Food, clothing, and shelter. But when you're in a place where you actually a part of a state that grows most of the food and does the production of it, I can't imagine what that does to you psychologically. Before the coronavirus shut down, U.S. economy and cost Traxler her job as a substitute teacher. She visited some community food shelves, but had never been to a large-scale food bank in her life. Now at age 41, she is a regular. This is one of the most jarring aspects of the hunger crisis. About 1/3 of those relying on food shelves, large-scale and emergency food distributions, now are doing so for the first time, according to Feeding America, the nation's largest hunger relief organization. In parts of Minnesota, that number is close to 70%. With the nation pitched in a fierce debate over entrenched and systemic inequalities, the most basic divide, who eats well and who goes hungry, is becoming more acute every day. Even before the pandemic, the U.S. already had the highest number of people who can afford a basic, energy-efficient diet among the world's 63 high-income countries. Wow. State of food security, and they're showing us. Wow, the United States is on top. We are no longer projecting a surge. We are experiencing a surge in food insecurity, said Allison O'Toole, the Chief Executive Officer of Second Harvest Heartland, provides truckloads of food to distributions like the one in Mankato. Facing hunger in the heartland. We are now seeing hunger. I'll play a little bit of this video here. It's taking a while to load.
We are now seeing hunger unlike anything we've seen since the Great Depression. Families are watering down milk, skipping meals to give their kids more. 1 in 8 Minnesotans are food insecure, including 1 in 5 Minnesota kids. We are no longer projecting a surge. We are experiencing a surge in food insecurity.
Minnesota seems like a place in the minds of many people, a place of plenty. People are living in big, beautiful homes sometimes and experiencing housing. There are single moms still, there are single dads still, there are families living in little pockets of unserved and underserved food deserts. There are enormous disparities in Minnesota, and it is especially acute in some areas of our community after the killing of George Floyd. So we have crisis upon crisis. I know other communities across the country are experiencing some of these things too. I looked around and I saw people running out of food, and I began a small food shelf. People started coming, and then people started donating. It's been now 7 years since that. Yeah, it's called Zenobia's Community Story. Everything is free. This began when I became a divorced and single mom. The first thing to be compromised for a family is their food budget. Shelf visitors or guests are exponentially more likely to have a chronic condition like obesity or diabetes or heart disease. One of the things I'm very focused on too is stripping stigma away. It's okay to ask.
Yeah, it's kind of repeating again, but it just shows you. I just wanted to get a quick excerpt from the video, and again, I'll take a look at it on your leisure. In contrast to Dust Bowl, years of Great Depression, the rationing of World War II, the crisis has nothing to do with food supplies. The U.S. in a time of historic abundance with plentiful grains, meat, and dairy, so much so that the farmers have been plowing over excess crops and dumping milk. But lockdowns have snarled supply chains, and food inflation is projected to rise at the fastest pace in almost a decade. Meanwhile, unemployment, low wages, and reduced working hours are diminishing purchasing power, all of which are disproportionately impacting women and minorities as is food insecurity. You show pictures here, just like the video did. Demand in Minnesota's food banks is up 65% this year, and groups like Second Harvest Heartland say that the peak has yet to come. The federal government's $600 weekly supplement to unemployment insurance would help millions weather job losses and pay household bills came to an end last month, and Congress can't agree on a replacement. Donald Trump issued a stopgap measure to provide $300 a week in federal support to most jobless benefit recipients, but the funds are only slow moving into America's wallets. And there are people like Traxler who didn't work enough previously to qualify for unemployment benefits. Her husband works in a livestock feed mill, helping to process the grain that fattens the state hogs, poultry, and other farm animals. Meanwhile, the family has had to give up eating meat. And look at they doing across the grocery spikes during the pandemic, which is dropping and starting to go down now. Wow. We have our mortgage, and then we have all of our utilities, she said. Really cut back, even the fruits and vegetables. Food is one of the last things on our list. Americans are unlikely to be suffering from all-out starvation, which plagues parts of Asia and Africa, but many people in the U.S. cope with food insecurity by skipping meals, just not eating enough, or eating the cheapest food available. The kind of diet can be calorie dense but lead to malnutrition. For children, malnutrition can have lifelong consequences, including stunted growth and even impaired cognitive development. That's all playing out right in the middle of abundant food production, even despite government and private aid. In a pre-COVID world, it was among the most food insecure states. Now, 1 in 8 people in the state is projected to struggle with hunger. Minnesota is home to a beef giant, Cargill Incorporated, Cheerio maker, General Mills, and Spam producer, Hormel Foods Corp. All three companies have been donating to food banks, and the Trump administration just dedicated an additional $1 billion to its program known as Farmers to Families Food Box Program, which is buying surplus supplies to deliver to food banks and other organizations. The emergency pop-up that Traxler attended was held in partnership with that program. Even then, much of the food waste on farmers hasn't been redirected because of limited logistics and infrastructure. And a Democratic lawmaker has launched an investigation to the food box program, citing a failure to deliver food to many communities that need it most. Interesting. Hunger in rural America isn't new. Even before the pandemic, some of the worst areas of food insecurity were in rural communities in the South. But this kind of massive spike in a place like Minnesota is a marker of how much the coronavirus has changed the landscape. In a pre-COVID world, it was among the most food-secure states. Now, 1 in 8 people in the state is projected to struggle with hunger. He's showing this by demographics and race even too. We view this as the most significant challenge that the charitable food system has ever faced in the U.S., said Katie Fitzgerald, Chief Operating Officer of Feeding America, which oversees a network of 200 food banks. The deepening hardship could help to explain why Trump is starting to lose support in rural countries where virus infections are also spreading fast. His job approval rate among rural residents has dropped over the summer. They're talking politics and we don't know. So I'm reading what they're saying. Trump spent time in August traveling to Minnesota along with other swing states like Wisconsin and Iowa, also major food producers. Many of the people who work in the food industry are among the worst off. Wow. You work in the food industry and still the worst off. It's terrible to hear these kind of things, you know. So just in 2016, about 12.8 million or 13% of America's food workers were food insecure, relying on the government's supplementary nutrition program known as food stamps. That's about 2.2 times higher than other industries. During the Great Recession, the figure surged to 4.6 million people. And the situation could turn more dire now because of prolonged wage stagnation, with some food earnings even falling during the pandemic, according to Jose Olivia, the campaign's director at Heal Food Alliance worker rights group. Alicia Rojo Rocha is a farm worker in Idaho's Canyon country, laboring in the fields of carrots, onions, alfalfa, and potatoes. She gets paid $12 an hour. The last time her wage went up was about 2 years ago when a co-worker on the farm got infected with coronavirus. Operations shut down and she was out of work for 2 weeks in late June. Her husband, who drives trucks for nearby farms, was unemployed for about a month during the pandemic. Expenses started to pile up. Rocha was late with rent payments and fell behind with other bills. While out of work, she started visiting a local food bank where she got bread, meat, beans, rice, and some produce. Now that she's working again, she's returned to the food bank because she says other people needed more. She hasn't returned to the food bank. I'm sorry, that's good. Immigrant from Mexico, she obtained citizenship in 2012 but hasn't applied for federal SNAP assistance because she says she doesn't like easy money. There are days Rocha eats nothing more than an apple or maybe a single tortilla with beans through her almost 10-hour physically demanding workday. When she returns home, she might have some eggs or potatoes. She sometimes feels helpless being in abundance and not being able to have it. Wow. She said, sometimes it's more important to pay rent than to buy food. She was paid on recent Friday, and by Saturday only had $3 left of her earnings after taking care of bills. Her employer on rare occasions lets her and other workers bring home a few potatoes or onions, but produce like carrots and alfalfa can't be touched. You simply adapt. I don't think about food, I just suck it up, he said. Rocha sometimes forego spending on food for herself to instead send money to her daughter in Mexico. She wants to make sure her grandchildren get fed. It is not uncommon for women globally to eat less or even skip out on food in favor of feeding other family members. Eons of societal pressures have made it so that women are often tasked with buying, growing, and preparing food and making sure household children are fed. Women and girls make up 60% of the population facing chronic hunger across the world. The gender gap is even greater among people who are poorer, less educated, or unemployed, according to CARE, a hunger relief and advocacy group. 1 in 5 U.S. households with children have experienced food insecurity during the pandemic. Women often eat less. They're eating less if food is scarce, says Tanya Rohr, a director at CARE. Food inequalities also exacerbated racial lines in the U.S. Black Americans are 2.5 times larger than their white counterparts who have low or very low access to enough food for an active and healthy life. For Latino Americans, the rate is double that of white people. That's a sharp reality in Minneapolis. Powderhorn, 20% of the residents have been living below poverty, living in the state. That's leaving the area further cut off from easy access to food, according to O'Toole, the Second Harvest Heartland, which helps run emergency grocery pop-ups in the neighborhood. On recent Friday, people started lining up for pop-up in Powderhorn Park. Eating in the neighborhood is also great. I'm kind of skipping over this a little bit here. It just shows you the state that we're in. To see this Minneapolis, this is unreal. This is the U.S. where we're dealing with this. A Latino community specialist with the city government who's working with the Second Harvest to coordinate the pop-ups. We're all human, and we all have the same right to have food and have nourishment. Powerful article, pretty lengthy. Take your time, read it, watch the video. I just wanted to, talk about this. So sometimes it's just not getting addressed enough. If this video has been any value to you, please subscribe, leave some comments. Until my next video, hit the like button. I'm out.